Hello, I'm Robert from Doomsday Debunked from Facebook, where we fact check the stories that you find on the web, on YouTube and in the news and so on that may scare you. And YouTube is a place that has loads and loads of these. And it's basically designed to scare you. Look, this supervolcano scientist freaking out. You can read from that. You can see the emotional tone that it's shrieking at you. They're trying to get you scared. You can tell that just the word they're using, freaking out. They're not using neutral language there. These people are trying to scare you. Then you have a look at the video and just look at this. So these are actual facts. That there were 3 supervolcano eruptions, and I think they've got those dates about right. I think they've got those dates right. There were 3 supervolcano eruptions. What they don't know is what's going to happen next.
This has led some scientists to predict that Yellowstone is likely to blow again in the next 500,000 years or so. Now,
that is that some scientists, well, actually, they don't actually know at the moment.
So, meaning that it could happen as...
So this is the actual fact. So what this chap has done, he's probably gone onto the internet and just Googled and said, will Yellowstone erupt? And he's picked up these figures from Wikipedia probably, or for some website, and they've got this figure 500,000 years. So you could go and do that. But this chap is he's obviously got some talent with making these videos that appeal to people, and so he just then goes away, does maybe a minute or two of searching on the web, just like you could do, and then comes back and then spends an hour or two, or however long it takes to make one of these videos. It may take longer than that, and making it into a big colourful video, because their aim is not really to be completely up to date and understand and know all the details and ins and outs. Their aim is to get a few facts from the web that will intrigue a few people and thrill a few people and scare a few people, and then make an entertaining video out of it, and then give it a scary title, and then get lots and lots of views. So they've had 500,000 views, nearly 500,000 views, and look, they've got 10,000 likes, but they've got 704 dislikes. So those are people saying, this is nonsense, it's inaccurate. It doesn't always have dislikes, but because some of them are urban legends that lots of people believe. But anyway, so he finds Yellowstone is likely to blow again in the next 500,000 years. You probably found that on the internet, and I'm not quite sure, but what the actual there might be some actual paper they found or something that said that's a possibility. Now this is invented next.
Soon as tomorrow. It could happen by the time you finish watching this video. Or it could happen later today when you're on your way to the store. Boom! You're trying to buy some snacks and instead you get the extinction of the human race. Point is, Yellowstone is trying to kill all...
So that is all invented. They didn't find that on the internet, they just made that up. So now let's go and look at what we actually know. So now I did this was a while back. It's possible they found this article, because it's still on the internet and it doesn't have anything on it, not there, but back down here I find it. This was so bad that this is an article in New York Times. You sort of think that it had got a Snopes debunk, right? And it was so bad that the actual researchers tweeted the Snopes. There's the Snopes thing. The actual lead researcher of this article tweeted the Snopes debunk of the New York Times treatment of their own research. That's how bad it was. So the answer is false. It's just completely false. And so that's their one. So that's about that particular story. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth. So here are Christy Till. Do I have a link to the tweet? Is that the link to his tweet? Is that on Twitter? Yes, that's on Twitter. So we bring that up. You can see this chap's tweet to the Snopes debunk. So your study had nothing to do with predicting an imminent eruption. And Professor Dr. Christy Till, yes, that is correct. And he's tweeted the link to the Snopes, and they bring that up, and that's the Snopes debunk. and that's the chap that this article. He said the article was titled "New Research Suggests Massive Yellowstone Eruption Could Occur Sooner Than Expected," and there's the actual researchers saying it's nothing to do with what could happen now. They were looking at the past, not the present. And then this is Mike Poland, who's the scientist in charge of the Yellowstone volcanic eruption. And unfortunately, the New York Times article is a good example of how some research can be misunderstood, exaggerated, and sensationalized. And it's actually about an eruption that occurred about 631,000 years ago. And it's nothing to do with current conditions. We have no indication there's any similar magma mixing, such as they described, happening now. And surely we would know from earthquake activity, ground deformation, thermal anomalies, water chemistry, and other indicators that would show changes. Yellowstone is one of the best monitored volcanoes on Earth, so these are changes we would not miss. And he sent that to an email to a friend, and he gave me permission to use this quote in my article. And his email to me, he said he thanked me for helping to tamp down the nonsense. So then let's go and find out. We don't know if it's ever going to erupt again as a supervolcano. So if you went back to that video and you look at the previous, get ready for endgame of humanity, and then from then on he's just riffing on this thing that he's actually made up. So you go back there, you've got those 3 eruptions. But supervolcanoes, what he hasn't explained, that supervolcanoes aren't like clocks. It hasn't been doing new supervolcano eruptions for since the beginning of time, and it's not going to continue until since the beginning of since the beginning of Earth, and it's not going to keep on going until for millions of years in the future. In fact, it's the Yellowstone volcano. Is the United States? You may know, it's easy to remember which directions it's moving. The United States and the Europe are going opposite directions because the Atlantic is gradually growing and getting a little bit larger. So the United States is moving very, very slowly, centimeters a year. It's moving west. And this plume is static beneath it. And so there's to the west of, no, hard to go, say that to the west of, so it's going like that. And then it appears, I've got it written down there, I think it's to the west, is the west, the old one is to the west of it. And then there's a previous one that did several supervolcano eruptions. And then the plume came onto the current Yellowstone, and it does several. And then it'll move again, and then millions of years, so Yellowstone will have its last supervolcano eruption. And we don't know if it's like 3 or 4. It's obviously not 2, it's had 3, but whether it's going to have a 4th one, we don't know. It will have its last supervolcano eruption, and then the plume will move, which it already is moving, and then millions of years later another one will start up. And the final phase, before that happens, is, and it's possible that this is going to happen in our future, probably the next thing will happen. They think it's quite possible that it has done its last supervolcano eruption. If that is true, then the next thing that we can expect to happen is that the magma just moves up to the surface and it just spreads out as a great big magma flow, which would flood much of the Yellowstone Park with magma and completely change it. But it wouldn't be a supervolcano eruption, it would just be a flow of magma, a big flow of magma, like the ones that produce the caves, the cliffs they have already. If you want to find out more about that, not me talking about it, but professional geologists, then have a listen to this video. And look, you can see, these are the previous supervolcanoes, I think. And that's it moving. So, because it's been in several different places in the past. I'm not sure which is the Yellowstone. Which way is it? So, have I got it right? The volcanic field is a little bit to the west of the Hesse volcanic field, so I was right, it was on the western side, was the one that erupted just before this Yellowstone volcanic field, and there have been basaltic eruptions in that, so that's kind of the next stage in the cycle. The basalt just sort of squirts through up to the surface, so he's summarising it. They're talking to each other, experts talking to each other as a kind of interview And you can just watch this. So if you want to know about Yellowstone, listen to the scientists, not to the journalists. And these are the experts from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. You can just listen to them talking about it. It's quite a long video, so I won't. It's 42 minutes, so I won't play it now. But you can just go on and listen to that. So, and then in the world as a whole, they're not that common. The 1.4 and 22 every million years. There's between 1 in 500 and 1 in 7,000 of approximately of one in every century. So most centuries are centuries without a supervolcano. Indeed, that's what you'd expect, because we haven't had one for as long as we've had our civilization. So 7,000 centuries, that'd be 700,000 years ago. Yes, 1 in 7,000 per century. Then you sort of work. That'd be hundreds of thousands of years ago, and then that would be more like tens of thousands of years ago. 50,000 years ago. So you would expect they're really quite rare, and it's not likely we have one this century. And then there's some recent research. Have I got it here? Yes, there's recent research about. Where is it? Yes, there's some recent research. So, I'll just bring that up. Why not bring that up? So, this is a supervolcano map, and I'll bring it up. There we are. So that's a map. So this is a research that found that there could be anywhere between centuries to thousands of years for a magma chamber to change enough to permit a supervolcano. And they found that there would be expected to see massive uplift, faulting, and earthquake activity far greater than the meter-scale events we have seen in recent times. We're talking in the range of tens to hundreds of meters of uplift. And even then, our models predict that the system would inflate for hundreds to thousands of years before we witness catastrophic eruption. People need to keep in mind that sites like Yellowstone are very well monitored, he said. It is also important to note that our research suggests that the whole rejuvenation to eruption process will take over several or more human lifetimes. Our models indicate that there should be plenty of warning. And so you would expect, in any case, that to be that there wouldn't be a supervolcano, because that's the normal situation in our century, and that is indeed the case in our century. Eventually it's going to happen, but it's likely to have lots and lots of warning, and they will start noticing that one of these supervolcanoes is not just moving up and down by a meter or so, but it's moving up by tens or even hundreds of meters, and they'll say, oh, the magma chamber is expanding down below. And in that future, so generations from now, there'll be a lot more knowledge of, I'm sure they'll be able to monitor what's happening down there far more than we can, and we can already do it very well. And there are actually ways of stopping a supervolcano, and particularly on those timescales. So there's no reason to do it at present because we won't have any risk. But you can drill. There was a thing about a risky thing of drilling in from the top. That you don't drill in from the top. That would be stupid. But what you can do is you can build like the geothermal power that you have in Iceland, where they generate heat from geothermal power. When you generate heat from the geothermal power, you're actually cooling down the rocks deep below the surface. So if you had geothermal power plants near, and obviously not from the top but from the side, and you understand the geology very well, and all you're doing is you're removing heat from the rock around the supervolcano, which indirectly will cool it down, which will then cool down the magma chamber, which will mean that there's less molten rock in the magma chamber, and that over many centuries to thousands of years, which is the time scale you'd be thinking about for a supervolcano. So we're talking about a very long-lived, stable civilization where it's stable for tens and thousands of years, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and you just don't want to have any more supervolcanoes. Then you'd build lots of hydrothermal plants like you have in Iceland around every single supervolcano. So they produce lots and lots of power, and the magma never goes supervolcano. You just get normal eruptions and if you have eruptions. So that is a possible future, but we don't need to worry about doing that at present, because none of ours are going supervolcano. And here I've got, these are the supervolcanoes we've got in the world. So there aren't that many. 1, 2, and if you go and click on it, then it tells you. So that one, not about to erupt, but could be prelude. But this is not. This is about. That's not a supervolcano. That's potentially especially dangerous because it's not like to erupt. Not like to erupt. Not like to erupt in our lifetimes. Probably won't erupt for 1,000 years more. Not able to go supervolcano. Not like to erupt. Could do so again, but remember, yes. So this one, but could be a prelude. But when you mean by a prelude, then they're talking about over centuries or thousands of years, or it could be not able to erupt. That's I've got a separate debunk about that one. It can't be flagrant. Yes. What's my? Let's see if I can find my debunk about that, because that goes in more detail than that. Camp Flegrei is not ready to collapse. Thousands of years in the future, most likely, and it's also it's rather small for a supervolcano. So there we go. It's not quite a supervolcano, a bit short of it. And its explosive index is 7. It needs to be 8 for a proper supervolcano. So the worst global case is a couple of years of temperature reduced a few degrees. It's not ready to collapse. It's likely to take thousands of years, or else it may be that it's over its colder collapse phase. And so the risk is a large eruption affects local people needing to evacuate more than 1 million is possible, but they're monitoring it carefully, which is right close to Naples. You imagine if you had to evacuate much of Naples. So, and that's a rather scary looking video, but it's being closely monitored. So it's not expected any time. So sometime in the future it may. So this is like a geological timescale. Geologists think a bit differently. When they say sometime it may happen soon, it doesn't necessarily mean in the next century or even the next 1,000 years. I should give a link to that from that, I think. Anyway, so and then I talk a little bit about Yellowstone down here. Effects of a supervolcano, right? And now, yes, I want to talk a bit about the effects of a supervolcano, because people think that if you get a supervolcano, human beings are going to go extinct. But if you think about it, we've had supervolcanoes quite often in the past. I mean, several every million years. And our previous ancestors, who were much less able to survive than we are, they didn't go extinct. And so it can't be right that a supervolcano will make us extinct in the future, whenever it happens, even 1,000 years from now. To get this map, sometimes it looks a bit scary, and it sort of shows all this dust and it goes right up to New York. What you need to remember is that this yellow bit is 1 to 3 millimeters of dust. If there was, so we're talking about not now, but if there was another Yellowstone eruption, say 1,000 years from now, if it hasn't quite finished at its present stage and has another supervolcano, then you would get quite a lot. So that's 1,000 millimeters, which is a meter. So the blue is a bit bigger than a meter. It's a meter of dust. Now a meter of ash. That's quite a large region. Would have a meter of ash if you had a proper supervolcano. And at that sort of level, if you think about it, like for instance, a meter of snow on a roof, if the roof is not designed to hold a meter of snow, and this would be a little bit heavier than snow. So you're talking about possibly collapsing roofs, and then you're also talking about it be very serious for livestock, because the dust, human beings can put masks on, but the livestock, and you can't equip all your cars with masks. So so you would have to, if you knew a supervolcano eruption, if our future people 1,000 years from now or whenever it is, know there's going to be a supervolcano eruption, then they will have to move any livestock out of the region that they want to keep, or design shelters for them that be able to withstand having a meter's thickness of ash on them. So, and over the entire United States, if they're still flying jet planes, but I mean, who knows what they're doing then? You know, they could be flying around in rockets, or they could be using electrical, Elon Musk's evacuated tunnels going around the world. Could be the whole world is fitted with tunnels, or it could be, who knows what they're flying around in, or flying cars, whatever. But and whether they would be vulnerable in the same way our present jets are, because the present jets are vulnerable to the dust coming in at the inlet and then being melted by the heat and putting a kind of glassy coating on the jets, which kind of clog them up. And so it's specific to that particular technology, and whether some future technology would be vulnerable, who knows, 1,000 years from now. But if there were a supervolcano now, which isn't going to happen, then you ground the jets during it. And it would just, all dust would disappear in the next minute way, it would be washed away like sand. Jets of grains would be grounded. And in the growing season, the dust smothers the crops, but it's actually a great fertilizer. So, and worldwide, it'd be cooler by, and this, I'm not sure about this figure, 10 degrees for a decade, but other people say that's a little bit high. So, that would be a supervolcano autumn, not a winter. And so in most places that's the difference between summer and autumn, not the difference between summer and winter. So you'd have to grow crops for colder conditions. Remember, this has happened in the past. Do I have a picture of the last one, Lake Tomba? I do. I have a different Yellowstone thing. What are we doing? I'll talk a little bit more maybe. So I can bring up the other one with the Lake Tomba thing on it. And I just want to say, yeah, so if you want to find one of my stories, if something comes up, if you go to the list up there, see list of debunking doomsday articles, I'm in the process of sorting them in a themed way. There's all those climate change ones, and then extinction, human extinction. So it's by category, but I'm in process. It'll take me an hour to complete it, because an awful lot that aren't. But if we go and they're not categorized yet, I will have a supervolcano category. So that's North Korea. That's one we're looking at. That's that one. This one, I think, has Lake Tomba in it. Yes, that's back to the front. So that's one of the hot springs. Oh yes, and I'll show you a little bit more. Yeah, why not talk a little bit more? So I'll talk about the geysers as well, because they did a little bit less than I thought to that pitch. So yeah, lake, there we are. See that lake there? That was about 75,000 years ago. And that entire lake, it didn't exist. And that's the result of a supervolcano. So you can get an idea of how big a supervolcano is. That all that material was thrown up into the atmosphere that originally was inside that lake. So it's a big lake. So it's ash covered Malaysia to a depth of 9 meters. So this seems to be a rather bigger one than the one for Yellowstone. They're not all the same size. I think Yellowstone seems to be rather small, a kind of bit of a tiddler as supervolcanoes go, in a way, to judge by those projections. And so it's ash-covered Malaysia to a depth of 9 meters. And there's an ash layer from it in central India, which is still 6 meters thick today. But remember, it's only 1 meter high over the central parts around Yellowstone. But the ash that they produce is really it's very good for crops. And so it would deposit a meter or so of ash over an area of several million square kilometers, and destroying 1 or 2 seasons of crops directly in the region, and indirectly by cooling the climate by 5 to 15 degrees C for a period of up to a decade, it would severely reduce crop yields. So that's the main effect if we ever did have a big supervolcano like that. So you would have to stockpile food in advance, and if you knew it was coming, and then you would tell the farmers to for instance, that you basically it's using crops from a different climate during the period of the supervolcano, because it's going to be quite a bit cooler. And noxious gases, which you'd have, that's mainly that's making the clouds that block out the sun. It's not that you'd have trouble breathing. The gases are nothing like, no effect like that. It's mainly the dust and clouds on the climate. So, yeah, with just a couple of year warning, we could test out the crops that we need. And you can also make, like, in our present day, I haven't have the figures there, but we feed so much of our grain to animals that even without digging up any pasture, if we just had less meat for a couple of years before, then you'd save enough grain for 3 billion people, I think it is. I have to look up that figure. It's in my, I don't know if I'm bringing that up just now, but several billion people, you can get enough grain for that many people just by rationing meat each year. So 2 years would be 6 billion people's worth of grain, which would, so depending how long it's going to be, then people might be prepared to ration meat for a few years in order to survive through a supervolcano, and have plenty to eat during that as well. Just change your diet for a decade in order to continue. So, but Lake Toba is fine, and it's one of these ones. And oh yeah, that's what I wanted to tell you about that. I'm not sure. I think we've got everything. Oh yes, I wanted to tell you about the geysers. So people get very confused by the geysers. I think don't think there's any sound on this. This shows is there?
A geyser needs at least 3 things to
yes.
work. The first is a water supply,
very short.
usually cool, shallow groundwater or surface recharge, to refill the geyser after an eruption. The second is a heat source. This is not lava or molten rock, but normally superheated water, forced up through cracks under high pressure. Finally, a geyser needs a plumbing system to store the water as it's heated. This is often a vertical shaft or conduit, perhaps connected to other voids or spaces nearby. This plumbing system needs to be pressure tight. In a geyser, this is due to a layer of mineral, called sinter, that is deposited on the walls of the conduit. Over time, more and more of this sinter may be deposited, sealing the walls and perhaps narrowing channels.
So then you get the idea of how that works. And then if you go a little bit further forwards, that's it filling up, you see. So the water fills it up. You can watch this, and then when it goes all the way full, then you get it turning into steam, and then the geyser comes up, and there's the geyser going up like that, and then it all turns into steam, and then it evacuates. And so that's how a geyser works. And it's nothing to do with the actual supervolcano, which is the magma, which is way down below. It's just the heat from the rock and some superheated steam, and that provides the heat source for the geysers. That's that video again. That's just what I wanted to explain there about. And did I say there about there's about little bits of rocks being thrown up? So that are not in that one. Then it's probably in the ones I'm doing here, and rocks. So it's actually a little bit. It's quite active right now. Yes, there we are. So first of all, you've got all these various cliffs. That is a cliff that was a result of a lava flow 180,000 years ago. And there's no lava flows there for 70,000 years. But this is by far the most likely kind of eruption. The last 80 ones have been like that. So they just create a cliff like that. That's just the lava that's just flowed and then solidified, and you're left with a cliff. So that may happen, and that is definitely still possible, but it's not very likely because only the last one was 70,000 years ago, and there haven't been any since then. But they're likely to happen again in the future. And then there's also activity all the time. You get hydrothermal explosions because of snow melt, but they haven't happened in recent times. And you often get changes in the magma chamber. So if the news says that the land has lifted up a few centimeters or more, then that doesn't mean anything. And then you get little. Do I mention it? You also get little eruptions, which ongoing activity. Oh yes, here we are. Although large hydrothermal explosions most explosions in historical times have been relatively small and left craters at most a few yards across. So yes, so the large ones in the past. In 2003, a linear, just a crack, appeared on a hillside, venting steam and throwing bits of rock onto the surrounding hillside. And so that can happen from time to time. This one in 2003. And although most of these are small, their remains can be noticed by observant visitors and attest to the nearly continuous geological activity at Yellowstone. So this is snow melt causing these things to happen, I think I said. And then getting into it and then causing little explosions as they heats up. So that's it. That's all in half an hour. That's about right. So yes, that's it. Remember, if you want to, you can look for my debunks here. Just remind you again. The way if you want to find my debunks on Quora, go to the list of debunking doomsday articles for my debunking doomsday, and then you can search that. You've also got the search blog thing, which sort of works at the moment, but Google is not very. It sometimes it doesn't seem to index everything, and it also is getting a little bit confused. Maybe by going to the new blog, but I'm not sure it's that. Because it's the same if you search the whole of Quora. Then you sometimes doesn't find things that are there, so it doesn't totally index everything on every page. It's a little bit patchy, so you don't always find what you're looking for that way. What I do myself is that once I can bring it up, so you won't see what I'm doing, but I'll bring it over. It's a very big web page, but I've got this web page of nearly all the articles which I've uploaded, which you can. Let me move it out to the new window. Yeah. So here we go. So it's quite a big. It's very big web page to do as a web page. So if your system struggles with it, you can try doing it with text, just looking at the HTML. And so if you want to look up, say, I don't know, one of the things we're looking at just now, the of a geyser, for instance, we want to look up geyser, and you just type geyser. And there, see more geyser, you see. But that's just the title. We want something in the body of the text which can show what the point in that is. So what were we just looking at? I suppose you want to look up from the quote from Mike Poland, for instance. You just remembered, so you just look up Mike Poland, and there we are with Mike Poland. So if you're interested in things I've got about him, it'll take a minute to find it. So anyway, you can do that, which doesn't work very well with you can look up someone's name, or you can look up something or other that you're interested in, you could do that. And so, and that is, you can find that if you go to the list of the articles, and then where is it gone? I think I put that at the end of the page now for some reason. Oh, I haven't copied over. Right, I'll bring that over and I'll copy it over there. Right. Yeah. So I used to have this page that you could download, which is all the, which has all the oh yes, you could no. I'll find that and I'll upload it. I'll update that, and there'll be a link there, and you can download the whole thing. Up to. Anyway, yes, that's it. I hope you're a bit scared. That's helped a bit with the Yellowstone. It's completely. There's no risk at all from supervolcanoes at the moment. We'll know very clear. It'd be very obvious, according to the geologists, if we do have one of these things going supervolcano. It's going to be very obvious.